Hello, my loves. Welcome back to another episode of Successful, Wealthy, and Confident. I have the amazing Brian Castillo here. He's a very special person to me because we actually went through our 6-month Reiki program together at the San Francisco Reiki Center. He has also been a longtime friend. He's very spiritually connected, and I'm excited to be able to talk with him on this podcast. And Brian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to chat and just kind of share my story. This is exciting. This is like full circle for us, I feel like.
I know. We did an Ascension chat where you were kind enough to interview me, and so we're going to pair the two together. But I'm excited to be on the other side of it and be able to ask you about your story and get to know you a little bit more, and have our audiences kind of come together and get to know us. So, Brian, I would love to hear more about your story, more about your healing journey. Kind of how you started with your spiritual awakening, and give me the backstory on everything.
Yeah, so let me try to kind of share it as kind of organized as possible, but it really started back when I was like 4 or 5. From my earliest memories, I just remember going in my day-to-day, going to school, just looking at everybody and being like, why does it feel like everyone else has this intuition about how to navigate the world and I just don't have it? And so that was really off-putting for me, being highly sensitive and empathic. There was just so much information that was coming through to me that I didn't know how to regulate. I didn't know how to process. And so that was my biggest challenge, being highly sensitive and empathic, and not really knowing how to navigate the world. So I kind of came into this life just doing what everyone else did because they looked like they knew what they were doing. So I found myself just copying them. And so what I noticed was people were bullies. So I kind of took a part of that and kind of, I remember being mean to some kids because that's how you make friends. That's how you become like, friends with other people, is by like joking around with other people and making fun of them. And so that's kind of like my upbringing, like growing up. I always felt like I was very independent, very much like a lone wolf, like just doing things on my own. I remember my mom told me, she was like, oh, when you were 2 years old, you would wake up in the morning by yourself, get a bowl, pour a glass of cereal, sit yourself down and just eat at 2 years old. And I was like, wow, like that's insane. Like, I don't remember it, but that just sounds insane. So I feel like that really resonated throughout my whole life, where I just felt like I was alone in this weird world that everyone knew what they were doing. Coming into junior high and high school, that's when I think the biggest challenges for me came up, because that was when I was going through my own identity crisis, where I was like, am I gay? Am I straight? Like, what is it that I am? And so that was probably the most difficult part of my life, where, not only did I feel different from everyone, but also different in the fact that I am probably gay, which I didn't come out until senior year of high school. And that was probably the most liberating thing in my whole life, where I just fully accepted who I was at that moment. And I recognized people around me they noticed the shift. They noticed this change in who I was. And I feel like that was really the start of my, I guess, spiritual awakening, at least the first step, which led all the way up until maybe 2020, was just me unpacking all of that negative programming, all those negative beliefs about being gay, being highly sensitive, being a crybaby, right? Being a loner, being quiet or shy. So kind of led up to 2020, where, a big thing happened around the world, but that really gave me an opportunity to look inward at a deeper level. And that's when I did like a lot of shrooms. I know a lot of people did their own, experience, but I did a lot of shrooms, and that really opened me up to a lot of healing and crying and just being real with myself. And that's kind of really how it started, is just 2020 and up until now. So that's kind of a little bit of my story, my history.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Brian. I would love to dive in a little bit more into kind of what gave you the courage to come out and how that shift actually happened, because I'm sure there are a lot of people in the LGBTQ community that don't even know if they are gay or are going through a similar crisis like that. And I would love to give them a little encouragement to be more of who they are. So I would love to hear more about like kind of what gave you the courage to come out. Was there a specific moment, or was it kind of a feeling that developed over time?
Yeah, and I think that's super important to just kind of highlight is that transition. For me, the way I can describe it is it felt like from sixth grade until I came out, it just
Mhm.
felt like this pressure pot of just boiling intensity of anxiety and
Yeah.
fear and doubt and overthinking to a point where I remembered it clearly. It was January 30th, 2010. I was in the shower, like just in there for like 30 minutes. I remember it just clicked and I was like, I'm done pretending this is who I am. And as soon as I'm getting chills. As soon as I realized that, I just remember like smiling so brightly. I was so happy. I remember even feeling so excited to like tell my friends, even if they maybe weren't, open to it. I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, I just want to express and share this new realization that I've had after so many years of just hiding and just limiting and like restraining myself. And so that was kind of like a shift. It was just like an instant like switch, just because it was just boiling over just so many years. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because as someone in my position who's a straight person but also somebody who wants to be an ally, I would never understand how that process would be for you and how you would feel in those moments, years of pretending to be something that you're not. So thank you so much for sharing that, and thank you so much for the listeners who might be going through similar trials and tribulations. Thank you for sharing that with them as well. I would love to hear also about being empathic as a young child. So you said that you felt kind of like a loner, and you felt like you were kind of going with the crowd because that's how you thought you'd be able to make friends. Um, if you could go back and speak to the younger version of yourself that is you know, feeling empathic and not even knowing what that means, right? Maybe not even knowing that he's feeling everybody else's emotions and everybody else's things. What would you say to that younger version of you as a piece of advice?
Yeah. I don't know why I feel like I want to cry. I haven't even thought of what I'm gonna say, but it's I think the one thing I would say is I see you. I see you. You're not invisible. I see what you're going through. I see and feel what you're feeling. And it's okay. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. You're not alone. You are in this for a bigger purpose than you recognize. But in this moment, just know that you are totally supported and loved. And that's probably the biggest thing I would say to my younger self.
Oh my God, I'm gonna let me not cry. That gave me chills.
Yeah.
I This is really resonating with me because I feel like as healers, we go through very unique challenges, because it's like the universe is kind of giving us um, a way of training us so that we learn how to deal with our own pain and transmute it into love and compassion. And you only know how to do that as a healer. And I think because we are healers, we go through these trials that really shape us into who we are. So we're both Reiki healers. I would love to get into how you kind of um found your way into the San Francisco Reiki Center and wanting to learn Reiki healing. And you're also talking about going above and beyond Reiki healing. I know that you got other certifications as well. So I would love to know what made you interested in becoming a healer in general and also a Reiki healer.
Yeah, so it was kind of a quick process actually starting getting into Reiki, but it all began in 2020 after like my shrooms and all of that stuff. It really hit me that I'm highly sensitive and I just need to own it. And that's just kind of how it is for me. And then it really all began when I read a book called Journey Out of the Body by Robert Monroe, which was about astral projection. And that was the first book that really opened me up to the world of energy, the world of frequency. And from that, I was really inspired to, okay, let me dive deeper into it. So I looked into books about chi and prana and like Chinese medicine and acupuncture, just because I was like, what is this energy that people talk about? Like, I don't know what it is. And then so it came to a point where I came upon a Reiki practitioner's Instagram page. It popped up on my should follow or whatever. And I opened up her page and she's like, oh, she has 888 followers. That must be a sign. So I booked a session with her. And it was probably the most activating session for me that I've had because during that session, I remember with my eyes closed, feeling like tons of like heat and warmth throughout my body. And then I remember she would leave the session like every now and then. And I was like wondering, well, why is she leaving? And then after the session, she shared with me that it was because she was having an allergic reaction. I was like, allergic reaction to what? And she was mentioning how she's like very allergic to cats. But I was like, oh, I don't really have a cat right now. So what is she? And then so she was saying how there was like an orange cat on like laying on my chest. And I was like, oh, that was my very first cat I had. His name was Sammy, and he passed away a year prior. And that's where he would always sleep on my chest at night. And so when she told me that, I just wanted to cry because it was like he was my guide. Like he was there to remind me that he was always with me. Because my relationship with my cat was difficult towards the last couple of years because he got diabetic and he required more care. But at the time I was working such a hectic and demanding job, I wasn't able to care for him. So I had to like give him away, to only find out a year later that he passed away. And I just felt so heartbroken that I wasn't there to see him like leave. But that was reaffirming to me that there's something else that's going on that I don't understand yet, but I want to understand. And from that session, I was like, okay, let me look up Reiki. And then I realized anyone can do Reiki. And so that led me to look up Reiki in the Bay Area. And so I looked up San Francisco because that's where I used to live. And so it felt like kind of coming back to my roots of like why I came up to the Bay Area from SoCal to begin with. And then I found SF Reiki Center, everything just resonated. And I was like, you know what, let me do this. Because at the time, I just got out of a job working at a Japanese company. And I was like, oh, this is like a Japanese kind of modality. So it kind of resonated with me on that level. And it kind of just started from there.
Wow, that's incredible. I love that your cat was with you during that session. I think that energy cannot be created or destroyed. So, when pets pass away, their energy, it just changes. And so I love to hear that that your cat was with you to the point where she was getting allergies. That's so insanely cool to me. Um, so you looked up Reiki from there. How would you define Reiki to somebody who doesn't necessarily understand Reiki? I know that for me, I like to define it as just healing energy, but that might not necessarily make sense to a lot of people. So, in your own words, how would you define Reiki?
Yeah, the general definition for Reiki is universal life force energy, But as people hear that, they're like, what does that mean? And
Mhm.
so the way I like to describe it is it's the life force that literally gives life to everything around us. It's the energy that allows the water to flow, that allows the wind to blow the directions it needs to blow. It allows the mountains to be created and formed because that's what Reiki is. Just as we are living our own life, it's because Reiki is allowing and flowing through us to live our life the way we need to live it. And that's kind of what Reiki is to me. It's this divine intelligence that's ever flowing throughout everything and all of us. But it's just a matter of, are we aware of it? Can we tap into it? And the thing is, we can. We definitely can.
I love that. I love that. That's the perfect way to describe Reiki. It kind of, I've been on a Star Wars kick, and I was thinking of doing a podcast on like Star Wars, but that kind of reminds me of Star Wars, the Force.
Uh,
Every energy is flowing in and out and everywhere in all of us. Um, so, so you also learned, what was it, Fire Reiki? Is that what it was called?
yeah, so I also learned Holy Fire Reiki,
Holy
which
Reiki.
is, yeah.
Okay. Would you say is there any difference between the two? I was really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, so the Reiki that we learned was the traditional Usui Reiki, which I would say it's more foundational. It's kind of like the baseline of Reiki, um,
Mm-hmm.
that branches off into other things as it grows and cultivates into this new thing, which was brought into Holy Fire Reiki, founded by William Lee Ran. And so Holy Fire Reiki, it's just a different frequency of energy. And I find it to be more heart centered. I felt like the traditional Reiki was very much more spacey and ethereal, but this Holy Fire Reiki feels more grounded into this reality. And so that's how I like to describe Holy Fire versus like Usui Reiki.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So how do you feel when you're giving Reiki healing versus so sorry, so how do you feel when you are giving Reiki healings? Yeah, I think that's what I was going to say.
It's okay. So when I give Reiki healings, I definitely feel this sense of stillness and calmness kind of drop into my heart space.
Mhm.
It feels very centered. It feels very like at home. And I feel like it's bringing me there to help me connect even deeper with the clients I work with, to
Mhm.
help bring in any information that is needed for them at the moment. And for me, it's just that stillness, kind of this deep calmness when I give Reiki.
I love that. So in my experience, and I would love to hear your experience with this, in my experience, when I am administering a Reiki healing, there are certain areas of the body, certain chakra systems where I'm putting my hands over and I'm giving Reiki, and certain areas feel colder, right? Certain areas feel warmer, certain areas are buzzing. Um, could you give like an example or a story of when you were giving a Reiki healing? It could even be like giving Reiki healing to yourself and you felt something that was different in a certain area of a body. And maybe you registered it with a chakra system or a feeling that you were getting from it. And then you told that to your client afterward and you're like, hey, I felt this. And they were like, oh my God, that's exactly what's going on with me. It's so cool when that kind of thing happens with me. So I would love to hear an example of any of your experiences with that.
Yeah, probably the most common one I've come across is around giving Reiki to the head space, like over the eyes and over the forehead, which
Mhm.
is really connected to like the third eye, like intuition, and crown chakra, like your connection to higher guidance and the universe. And so the most common one I feel is like this denseness or almost like a cloud or fog of energy. And when I put my hands over it, it feels like I'm like uh, putting my hands over like some type of mist. And I know there's some type of distortion or distraction that's in the mind. And so when I bring it up to the client, I ask, oh, like it feels like maybe there's some type of over rumination or maybe some type of confusion in your mind that's not able to bring you clarity? And they're like, yes, like I've been so confused on like what to do next, or like where I'm at in life, or blah 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 blah, like what my purpose is. And
Yeah.
so that's probably the biggest like pattern I've noticed around the headspace. It's just kind of that fog, that kind of denseness over their headspace, for me at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I totally relate to that. I tend to feel like a buzzing
Mhm.
for me when people are stressed in the headspace. I feel like just generationally and as a whole in society, we're very much meant to only connect to logic, and I feel like um, that probably is the reason why there are so many people who feel overwhelmed in their headspace. Um, so that definitely makes sense to me. I would love to know what is next for you. So I know that you are doing more studying because you're just a lifetime learner. I would
Mhm.
love to hear kind of what's the big picture for you. So you run your own Reiki business called Reikified.
Mhm.
Um, I would love to hear like how do you want to see your business impact the world? Because it's just so exciting and you're such a unique healer. So I would love to hear like your vision.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question because I feel like there's just so many ways you can kind of do this or do things.
Mhm.
But for me, I always felt like Reiki was just like a stepping stone. It wasn't like, okay, this is it. This is what I'm going to commit to for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
And now that I'm getting into it 3 years later, I'm really like, yeah, this is really a stepping stone for the next thing, which is getting into Akashic Records reading. That's something that I've been really kind of interested in. It's like my special interest. Like I've just been watching so many videos. I've been practicing also for the past couple months just to get familiar with the energy, with the frequency of the records, and a bigger picture. It's just reminding me that Reiki needed to happen so that I can get familiar with my own energy. So when I tap into others people energy on a bigger scale, it's going to be a little bit easier. And so the Akashic records, I feel like it's adding another layer to people's story, not just their energy centers and their emotionality, but their genetic lineage, their soul lineage, their soul essence, kind of where they come from on this grand scale of the universe. And so that's kind of what I find is so interesting. And I've had a couple Akashic readings done on myself from people.
Mhm.
Um, and the readings always are resonating with me at such a deep level that I just can't explain. There was one that I had where she brought up a very touchy subject about my heart chakra. At the time, my heart chakra was super closed. It was very blocked. It wasn't open at all. And she mentioned how there was visions of a past life where she saw me as like a little kid. Like I was maybe 4 or 5 years old, and she saw me like observing my mom on the phone. And she was on the phone, and as the Akashic record reader dived deeper, she noticed that my mom at the time, like I'm like ready to get emotional. The mom at the time was talking about like selling me to child trafficking.
That's
Um, and as soon as she said that during the reading, I burst into tears. Like I cried like a huge baby out of nowhere. And I was like, what is going on? Why is this coming up for me? And
yeah.
she was like telling me that tears are just another sign of truth, and that at some level, this was your truth, but it's coming out for you to heal. And so I found that to be super activating for me on so many levels, and made me realize that there's more to just our one life that's affecting us, and that sometimes the patterns that we play out are because of something else that's not even in this timeline. It's from many timelines ago, or from your past ancestors from so many generations ago. And I found that to be super like eye-opening for me. And so that's kind of where I'm kind of getting into with Akashic Records, is just helping highlight to other people that there's more out there than just what we know, and allowing us to open ourselves to that idea. And I feel like this is kind of the way forward for a lot of us, ultimately.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. That just gave me chills.
Yeah.
It it's really it's really mind-boggling to think that there's more than one life than this that we've lived, and there are more lessons to be learned, and it's Akashic records. I really didn't know about it until we had a conversation about it. We were having lunch at one point during our Reiki classes, and we had a conversation about Akashic records and getting into the subject. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So Akashic records is essentially your own soul story, or is it like a culmination of all the soul stories in this library, or both, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, that's a great question because it's such an abstract idea and concept, but the best way I can describe it is, there's this field of energy that is holding all of us in this now moment. And this energy is literally recording what we say, what we think, how we feel, what we're doing, who we're interacting with. So I like to compare it to like the cloud or the internet. It has all this information where we upload something, it's in the cloud forever, but this is on an etheric level. And so on the 3D level, the internet is just like the physical manifestation of like the Akashic records. And so because it holds all the information in all the universe, you can tap into this record. It's not so much a library, it's just a field that you can tune your dial to tune into a certain frequency, and then you can receive that information. And so when I tap into it, I just feel this void. It's like such this expansive void. I'm just like lost. And that's something that surprised me in the beginning when I first was practicing. I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel, but this is kind of overwhelming. Until I realized I really need to focus my intention and my question, and that kind of hones in on exactly where in the records or in this energy that I'm going to receive the information.
Wow. So you're kind of like a librarian for
Kind
the
of.
records of the universe. That's
Yeah, literally.
cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love that because with that knowledge, you can deepen your healing. You can heal
Absolutely.
not only this life, but past lives.
Oh, absolutely. And something I found was just talking about a traumatic moment from a past life is healing because it's bringing it up to the surface. And that's why I feel like Akashic record readings are so powerful, because it's going to activate people on another level, and it's going to expand their mind. And because they can expand their mind knowing that there's more out there, it's going to relate back to them and realize, oh, there's more that I can do too. I'm not just limited to this one path or this one identity or this one job. I can do more than what I think I know. And that's what I love about the readings, because it's so eye-opening. The thing is, anyone can do it, and we're doing it all the time, right? So think about the downloads you get or the insight you get. Like, that's coming from the field of energy, which is like the Akashic, the Akasha. And so it's just about honing that radio. Can we tune into it more specifically? And that's what Akashic Records is. It's just refining our tuning to tune into something more specific, like this past life or this situation.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
And then learning Reiki can really learning Reiki as well can really complement both, because you bring the healings up you bring the things that need to be healed up to the surface, and then you use Reiki energy as assistance to heal those wounds in a quicker pace, mind, body, and spirit level.
Exactly. And the thing I'm noticing too is that there's a separation that we create with energy, but as people are receiving the readings, they're receiving Reiki through the story, because Reiki is everything and all. So it's like they're receiving just by hearing the Reiki vocally, through sound, through vibration from someone's vocal cords. And when I realized, I was like, whoa, that like blew my mind. That Reiki isn't just hands-on, it's all encompassing, it's everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. Let me reel it back in. Oh my gosh. I feel like I could talk to you about this forever. We're going to have to make a part 3 and a part 4. Oh my gosh, Brian. So thank you so much for sharing your story. I feel like I personally received not only so many lessons in this talk, but also just being around you and being in your healing energy. It really brings to life everyone that listens to you. So thank you so much for coming on to this podcast episode. I really appreciate it. So for those who would like to work with you, who would like to hear more about you, follow you on social media, I'll go ahead and put everything on the info on the podcast, but go ahead and just give us a little rundown of where clients can find you.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. They can find me at Reikified, spelled REIKIFYD. I have my link for my website in there too, but you can also find me on my website at reikified.com, spelled the same exact way. And I'm also getting into YouTube. So expect more content from there. Same thing, at Reikified, where I'll be sharing more Akashic Records related things, which kind of ties into Reiki. Yeah, that's kind of where you guys can find me.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much again for coming on to this podcast, and I will have a talk with you soon.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Yay! Okay, take care. Bye.